Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra Book 3 news update video. So I'm just going to get straight into the news, because we've got a little bit to cover, maybe a little bit of a rant coming up about one of the things. But first of all, we have a bit of news that's kind of gone unmentioned by a lot of people. We mentioned it on the podcast last Sunday, but that is Brian Konietzko on his blog, Tumblr blog, in the post before the one where he posted that new Book 3 image, actually mentioned that the production on Korra is going to be winding down come December of this year, so December 2014. And that's interesting because that means that by December 2014, they're gonna. He mentions in the post that they're gonna be down to a skeleton crew. So there's gonna be very few members left of the, I suppose, original Korra crew working on the show, because I assume at that stage all that will be left to do is for Studio Mir to animate the remainder of Book 4 and then send it to the skeleton crew, who will then edit the episode together. So I assume that this means we're down to just the very kind of bones crew of the show, Mike, Brian, editors and stuff like that, maybe probably the track team involved as well with the music, because that's one of the last steps. So I found that interesting that no one really mentioned it, but by the end of the year, Core Productions is more or less over, and that's really interesting that we think this has been such a long journey, waiting for the core and then the actual experiencing it, but there will be we won't be getting much production, I suppose, news come the end of the year. That's interesting by itself. Next piece of news, let me just get this up here so I can read it out to you, is that Jeremy Zuckerman, who's obviously a member of the track team, he's the composer, does the music for Korra, he posted on his Facebook page, let me just get it back up. He posted on his Facebook page a bit of an update. He's been doing this for the past few weeks, like little updates on the kind of status of the Korra Book 2 soundtrack, and I assume he's been talking to Nickelodeon. That seems to be the gist of what he's been talking about the last few weeks. And just I suppose yesterday at this stage, he posted this. The Korra Book 1 soundtrack has sold really well in I suppose asterisks as he has for the soundtrack genre, but we need to move a lot more to get a Book 2 OST. And then he links the Amazon listing for the Book 1 original soundtrack. And I'm assuming this is a direct response to the other stuff he's been talking about. Like, he just uploaded Janora's Light a few weeks ago. I think in some of the comments he's been talking about trying to make it happen, needing to get Nickelodeon's permission to make this happen. So I would assume that a lot of this post that he says here is a direct response from Nickelodeon and him just telling the fans that this is what needs to happen. And this post kind of really annoyed me. I know a lot of the comments on this post, if you go to his Facebook page, will be people saying, yeah, I'll buy another soundtrack, I'll buy another one. But this comes across really badly if this is like what Nick literally said to him, that, yeah, it sold well, but we need to sell more to make the next one, because that sort of attitude just makes no sense to me, because at this stage, the soundtrack has been out for 6 months. It's realistically sold as much as it's going to sell, so they're not going to sell a lot more of the soundtrack. I don't think they're going to sell enough to make the Book 2 one happen regardless, because I think the fact that it's already sold well kind of shows you the kind of limit of where it can go. It could happen, definitely. It could sell as much as whatever it needs to make, but honestly, I think the better business decision is for them to put a Book 2 pre-order up, Book 2 soundtrack pre-order up, because them doing this, I don't think this is going to get them that many extra sales. Honestly, them saying basically that we're holding the Book 2 soundtrack hostage unless the Book 1 one sells more. I don't think that's going to do them that much good. They need to just confirm a Book 2 soundtrack, because at the end of the day, that's going to make them more money. To me it makes no sense that they'd say that okay, it sold really well for the soundtrack genre, and I'm kind of just wondering to myself, were you expecting it to outperform popular music, for it to top the soundtrack charts in certain locations when it was up against, I think, Man of Steel trailer at the time? That's really good, and for it to sell really well, I think it's fine. Like they're clearly making money on the book one soundtrack, and Jeremy Zuckerman's realistically going to do most of the work for making this happen, and he wants it to happen. He already, I think, from what we've seen, he's already done Janora's Light. So, you know, the I just don't get this, honestly. And if they're saying that expected the book one soundtrack to sell more, well, it's actually Nickelodeon's own fault if it didn't meet their expectations, because look at the dates about when this kind of came about. Book one started April 2012. Book one ended June 2012. The book one soundtrack came out 13 months later in July 2013. That's a big wait to expect a soundtrack for something that I suppose usually comes out recently. Like I think most movies release their soundtracks before the movie's even out, or at the very least just a few weeks afterwards. So for them to expect it to sell really well more than a year on is a lot, and so the fact that it was topping charts and selling really well is excellent and shows how passionate the fandom is about this. So this just makes this kind of comment even kind of worse for me in terms of Nick being kind of greedy, money grabbing, at least for what it seems. Add into that at that point of time, July 2013, that was the point when we were at the kind of height of the wait for book three. That was 13 months into our 15-month book three wait. At that stage, SDCC I don't think had quite happened yet, so SDCC was where we got like our first big trailer really for for book two, and we started to have hope that it wasn't too far off. So it sold well at probably one of the lowest points in the fandom ever. So to me, it just what makes sense to me logically is that they should have announced the book two soundtrack almost as soon as book two ended to really catch on to Korra when it was at its most popular. The longer they wait, the less it's gonna sell, I think. And if they do another thing where this only happens like a year later, I don't see what the point is really to it, because the same thing's just gonna happen again. And this really was unexpected to me, because if you had asked me what I thought was one of the most positive merchandise releases last year, I would have said the soundtrack, because we as a fandom made that happen with our petitions and stuff like that. We did really good pre-orders when they first announced it. It sold really well, and I would never have said to you that we would have a problem getting a book 2, 3 or 4 soundtrack to come out. So to hear that they're already doing this whole thing where they want the first one to sell more before they do anything with the second one, it just comes across really bad for Nickelodeon, honestly. But I'm going to stop talking about that now. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think of this thing. I'm obviously doing this under the assumption that this is Nick saying this, and maybe it could have been just Jeremy, maybe wording things not quite the best. But for me, the asterisks for the soundtrack genre and the move a lot more, it comes across as really like buy more or this isn't going to happen, we're holding this ransom over you. But let me know in the comments what you think of this. I'm really interested to see what you think. Final piece of news will be just that obviously it's now the 9th of January. The 7th of January was meant to be the release date for the Legend of Korra third junior novelization, the first one for book 2, Spirits. I looked yesterday in the comic book store where I got the second one day of release. They didn't have it. I then went to order it on Amazon, and they still had a pre-order up as of yesterday. They said it was January 8th, and they still had the pre-order saying pre-order January 7th. I looked this morning, currently unavailable. I looked on Amazon.com, who hadn't had the actual order for this book up for months, and they had it back up but saying currently unavailable. The Random House, the publisher, their website doesn't list anything about it either. And add to that the fact that there was no cover released yet. There was no title released for the book either. It was just called Korra Junior Novelization 3. When obviously it was number 1 was Revolution, number 2 was Endgame. So we expected 3 to have a name on it, but it didn't. Apparently, it the book didn't actually come out. I've actually emailed Random House about this. I doubt I'll get a response, but if I do, I'll definitely post a video, post on the site avatarthelastairbender.online.com. But yeah, it's just interesting that this is the first like mass market book 2 merchandise going to be released, and it's not out there. And it just plays into the whole thing of Nick is not merchandising this show properly. I've talked about this in the podcast multiple times. I've talked about it in my YouTube channel multiple times. But wow, the fact that this book, no one knows anything about it really, other than that it's the third junior novelization. It's got no date. I don't even know if it is about book 2. I'm just assuming that because it is a number 3. We don't know the cover yet, and it was apparently released 2 days ago. Amazon doesn't have it, and if Amazon doesn't have it, where is this book? I'm just really confused as with regards to this. Nick haven't mentioned anything about this book. Now Nick are not doing anything with the soundtrack, and you sort of are wondering like the ratings for Korra fell with book 2, and you just kind of ask yourself, Nick, it's your own fault. You're not merchandising this show. You're changing the time all around. You're expecting more, but doing less to promote it. It just makes Nick look really bad. And I've tried my best this season to really not really talk badly about Nick, and I've praised him on multiple occasions for. I suppose when they actually did air Korra, they aired it fine. There was only one break, and that made sense when it took place. But it still made problems changing the time around. Now they're having problems with the merchandising. Like book 2 DVD hasn't been officially announced yet. There's no book 2 art book announced yet. The book 2 soundtrack, at least it has a hope. And apparently Nick Jeremy Zuckerman has at least been in contact with Nick apparently about it, but it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon, which is kind of when we want it. So are we looking like getting all this book 2 merchandise when book 3 is coming out? This just seems like they're like a year behind and everything, and they just seem really unorganized with regards to promoting this show and stuff like that. Combined with the fact that for the past 2-3 months, Coronation have been saying that they're going to be coming back soon, and they still haven't come back yet. Is this just starting all over again? Like we had positivity at the end of book 2 because it was so good, and then the announcement of book 3, we got the name really early, we got some information, but now it's all come to a kind of grinding halt. Something needs to happen soon, really positive. The only thing that's working like clockwork in the Avatar fandom right now is Avatar comic releases, because we always know when we're expecting new comic releases, the cover to be released, preview pages, and all this other sort of stuff. That's all we really know. The only confirmed dates right now in the fandom are really the comic book releases. So February 5th, the Search hardcover edition. I'm going to be getting it day 1. Haven't had too much trouble getting my hands on Avatar comics. Hopefully this will be something that goes right for once. But yeah, it's kind of a negative kind of news update, but it's confusing. Definitely. I really want to know your thoughts on all this video. Am I being too negative or whatever? But thanks for watching, and bye.